The train was traveling at 80 miles per hour, 347 passengers on board. When Hank Sullivan spotted the metal object on the tracks ahead, his heart stopped. That shape, that size, that placement, he'd seen it hundreds of times in Iraq. IED, improvised explosive device. But now the train was too close to stop. 30 seconds until impact. And the only man who could save everyone was a 62-year-old Amtrak conductor who hadn't told anyone he used to be the Army's top bomb disposal expert. Welcome to Echo Stories. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. This is the story of Henry Hank Sullivan and the day his hidden past became the difference between life and death for 347 innocent people. The 7:15 a.m. Wolverine service from Chicago Union Station to Detroit was Hank Sullivan's favorite run. 30 years he'd been working this route, twice daily, 6 days a week. The passengers knew him, the conductors respected him, and the engineers trusted his judgment completely. Hank was 62 years old, gray-haired, with the kind of calm demeanor that made nervous travelers feel safe. He wore his Amtrak uniform with pride, kept his conductor's cap straight, and had never missed a day of work in 3 decades. What nobody knew, not his colleagues, not his supervisor, not even his wife, was that before Hank started working for Amtrak, he had spent 15 years as a U.S. Army explosive ordnance disposal specialist. Staff Sergeant Henry Sullivan, 89th Ordnance Battalion, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait. Over 2,000 successful bomb disposals, 0 casualties under his command. He had retired from the military at 32, mentally exhausted from the constant life-or-death decisions. The railroad offered him peace, predictable schedules, routine work, no explosions, just the steady rhythm of steel wheels on tracks. But some skills never fade. Some instincts never sleep. Tuesday morning, October 15th. The Wolverine was running on schedule, pulling out of Kalamazoo Station with a full load of passengers. Business travelers heading to Detroit, college students returning to campus, families visiting relatives. Hank walked through the cars, checking tickets, chatting with regulars. Mrs. Patterson from Grand Rapids traveling to see her new grandson. Tommy, the kid who commuted to community college 3 times a week. The businessman who always sat in car 3, seat 14A, and never looked up from his laptop. Everything normal. Everything routine. As they approached the curve outside Battle Creek, Hank moved to the front of the train for his customary safety check. Engineer Bill Martinez was at the controls. 20-year veteran, steady hands, good instincts. "Beautiful morning, Bill," Hank said, settling into the conductor's position. "Perfect visibility," Bill replied. "Should be in Detroit right on time." That's when Hank saw it. 300 yards ahead, where the tracks curved around Miller's Woods, something metallic gleamed in the morning sun. At first glance, it looked like debris, maybe a piece of farm equipment that had fallen off a truck, but Hank's trained eye caught details others would miss. The object was positioned directly on the rails, not beside them. It was the wrong color for agricultural equipment, too dark, too uniform. And it was exactly the right size and shape for... "Bill, slow down," Hank said quietly. "What is it?" "Not sure yet. Just ease off the throttle." But even as Bill began to reduce speed, Hank's mind was racing through calculations. Current speed, 78 miles per hour. Distance to object, 280 yards. Stopping distance for a fully loaded Amtrak train, approximately 1.2 miles. They weren't going to stop in time. Hank reached for his binoculars, hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. He focused on the object, and his worst fears were confirmed. Cylindrical metal casing, wires visible on the sides, positioned for maximum impact. This wasn't debris or equipment. This was a bomb. "Bill, emergency stop. Now." "What?" "Hank, we're in the middle of now." Bill hit the emergency brakes without question. The train shuddered, sparks flew from the wheels, but Hank knew it wouldn't be enough. They had maybe 90 seconds before impact. Hank's military training kicked in automatically. Assess the threat, calculate options, execute the plan. The device looked like an EFP, explosively formed penetrator. designed to punch through armor. On a train traveling at this speed, it would derail the entire consist, sending cars tumbling down the embankment. With 347 passengers aboard, casualties would be catastrophic. But Hank had seen hundreds of these devices in Iraq. He knew their construction, their weaknesses, their timing mechanisms. Most importantly, he knew that EFPs were typically triggered by pressure sensors or remote detonation. If it was pressure-triggered, the train was doomed. But if it was remote-triggered, Hank keyed his radio. "This is Conductor Sullivan to dispatch. We have a code-red emergency situation at milepost 142. I need immediate contact with law enforcement and bomb disposal units." "Hank, what's going on?" Bill asked, sweat beading on his forehead. "There's an explosive device on the tracks ahead. I'm going to try to disarm it." "You're going to what?" "Bill, I need you to listen carefully. Before I worked for Amtrak, I was Army EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. I've disarmed devices like this before." Bill's eyes widened. "You were military?" 15 years. Iraq, Afghanistan. I've done this before, but I need your help." The train was still slowing, but not fast enough. 60 seconds to impact. Hank grabbed his emergency kit and headed for the front door of the locomotive. "When I give you the signal, you back this train up as fast as you can. Don't stop until I tell you." "Hank, this is insane. We should wait for the bomb squad." "There's no time. Those are 347 innocent people behind us." Hank opened the front door of the locomotive. The ground was rushing by at 40 miles per hour now, but slowing. He'd jumped from moving vehicles before, but that was 30 years ago. Some things you never forget. Hank waited until the train slowed to 20 miles per hour, then jumped. He hit the gravel ballast hard, rolled to absorb the impact, and came up running toward the device. 50 yards away, he could see it clearly now. Definitely an EFP, but modified. The wiring was wrong for a pressure trigger. This was remote detonation. Someone was watching, waiting for the train to get close enough, which meant he had maybe 30 seconds before they triggered it. Hank approached from the side, staying low. His old EOD training came flooding back. Never approach directly, always assume secondary devices, look for the trigger mechanism first. There, a cell phone taped to the side of the casing. Remote detonation via phone call. Simple, effective, and still active, 20 yards away now. Hank could see the detonator wires, the main charge, the shaped metal liner that would form the projectile. If this thing went off while he was this close. But 347 people were counting on him, people who had no idea their morning commute had turned into a life-or-death situation. 15 seconds. 10. 5. Hank reached the device and immediately located the primary circuit. In Iraq, he would have had a full EOD kit, robots, backup teams. Here, he had a pair of wire cutters from his emergency kit and 30 years of experience. The cell phone was already receiving a call. The screen showed incoming call, and Hank could see the device trying to complete the circuit, but the caller had made one mistake. They'd used a cheap detonator circuit that required a sustained signal. If Hank could interrupt the power source before the circuit closed, he yanked the battery from the cell phone. The device went silent, but Hank wasn't done. Cell phones could restart, backup circuits could engage. He needed to make this thing completely inert. Working with the precision of a surgeon and the speed of a man who'd done this thousands of times, Hank traced the detonator wires to their source and carefully cut them at the junction box. The bomb was disarmed. Within 10 minutes, the area was swarming with FBI agents, bomb squad technicians, and railroad security. The train passengers were evacuated to buses and taken back to Battle Creek Station. Agent Sarah Chen, FBI Counterterrorism Division, was the first to interview Hank. "Mr. Sullivan, what you did was incredibly dangerous and incredibly brave. What's your background?" "Former Army, ma'am. EOD specialist." "How many years?" 15, Staff Sergeant, 89th Ordnance Battalion. Agent Chen's expression changed. "The 89th? You served in Iraq?" "2 tours, Afghanistan as well." "Sir, the 89th Ordnance Battalion has the highest success rate in military history. You guys were legends." Hank shrugged. "We just did our jobs." The FBI investigation revealed that the bombing was part of a larger domestic terrorism plot targeting transportation infrastructure. The perpetrators had been monitoring train schedules and had planted the device the night before. If Hank hadn't recognized it for what it was, if he hadn't had the training to disarm it, the Wolverine would have derailed at full speed. Computer models showed that at least 200 passengers would have died, with hundreds more seriously injured. "Mr. Sullivan," Agent Chen said during the follow-up interview, "in my 15 years with the Bureau, I've never seen anything like what you did. You saved 347 lives with a pair of wire cutters and 30 seconds to spare. Those people didn't deserve to die because some lunatic wanted to make a statement. Why didn't you tell anyone about your military background?" Hank was quiet for a moment. "Because I came to the railroad to get away from bombs and explosions. I wanted a peaceful job where the biggest emergency was a late departure. Do you regret coming out of retirement, so to speak?" "No, ma'am. Those passengers trusted me to get them safely to Detroit. That's exactly what I did." When the passengers learned what had happened and who had saved them, the response was overwhelming. Mrs. Patterson, the grandmother from Grand Rapids, found Hank at the temporary station. "Sir, I need to thank you. My grandson, I'm going to meet him for the first time today. Because of you, I'll get that chance." Tommy, the college student, approached with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Hank, I had no idea. All this time you were a real hero." "Son, I'm just a train conductor who had some experience with explosives. The real heroes are the people who get up every day and take care of their families." The businessman from seat 14A, who had never looked up from his laptop in 3 years of commuting, waited until everyone else had thanked Hank. "Sir, I'm retired military myself, Marines. I know what you did today, and I know what it cost you to do it. Thank you." The story made national news within hours. Train conductor saves 347 lives. Hidden hero prevents railway disaster. Former bomb expert stops terrorist attack. Hank declined all interview requests. Amtrak offered him a promotion, a commendation, a transfer to headquarters in Washington. He declined all of them. "I like my job," he told his supervisor. "I like this route. These passengers trust me. I'm not going to let them down by leaving." 3 weeks later, Hank was back on the 7:15 Wolverine service to Detroit. Same uniform, same cap, same calm demeanor. But something had changed. Passengers recognized him now. They shook his hand, thanked him personally, asked about his family. Mrs. Patterson brought photos of her grandson. Tommy introduced his girlfriend, who wanted to meet the hero. The businessman started looking up from his laptop to chat. "You know, Hank," said Bill Martinez during one of their runs, "in 30 years of railroad work, I never met anyone like you." "What do you mean?" "Most of us just drive trains. You save lives." Hank smiled. "Bill, every day we get these people safely to their destination. We save lives. It's just usually not as dramatic." That evening, Hank sat on his porch in Battle Creek, watching the sunset over the railroad tracks that ran behind his house. His wife, Sarah, brought him a cup of coffee and sat beside him. "Any regrets?" she asked. About what?" "About having to go back to that other life, even for just a few minutes." Hank considered the question. "You know, for 15 years in the Army, I disarmed bombs to save soldiers' lives. Important work, necessary work, but those soldiers signed up for danger. And today I saved 347 people who just wanted to visit their families, go to work, start their day. They didn't sign up for danger. They trusted me to keep them safe." Sarah squeezed his hand. "So no regrets?" "No regrets. Just grateful I was in the right place at the right time." 6 months later, Hank still runs the Wolverine route. He still checks tickets, still chats with passengers, still maintains his routine. But now, his trained eye scans for more than just routine safety issues. He watches for suspicious packages, unusual behavior, anything that doesn't belong, not because he's paranoid, but because 347 people learned that their safety depends on someone who cares enough to notice. The FBI asked him to consult on transportation security. He agreed, but only part-time. His first responsibility is still to the passengers on the 7:15 to Detroit. "Those people get on my train trusting me to get them home safely," he tells new conductors during training sessions. "That's a responsibility I don't take lightly. Sometimes the most dangerous threats come disguised as ordinary problems. Sometimes the most qualified person to handle a crisis is the quiet professional who never talks about their background. Hank Sullivan could have stayed in his seat, called for help, and waited for the experts. Instead, he remembered that 347 lives were more important than his own safety. Real heroes don't seek the spotlight. They see a problem, they have the skills to fix it, and they act. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe stories like this should continue to be told, support Echo Stories by subscribing. See you in the next video. And remember, that quiet professional next to you might be the person who saves your life someday.